Okay,
All right,
apparently.
everybody. So real quick, we are live on YouTube now. All right. So do me a favor, y'all. I'm sorry. I had to change it up. I couldn't get into what? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa.
Okay. So here it is. All right, real quick. So we live on YouTube. What I need everybody to do is you got to update the people that have been texting you and whatnot. You got to update them and let them know that I had to switch it to my personal page, my personal YouTube page, which is just my name. I can't stand this dude, which is just my name. So if you can, just let everybody know what's good or what's going on with that.
Is your name separated or is it all one together?
Let me look at it right quick.
First, last, middle, initial. What we doing here?
Right.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna let you know right quick. Hold on.
Is it Micah Carter? Is it Micah Brandon Carter?
It's just Micah Carter with a space in between. I'm looking at it now. It's Micah Carter.
Say less.
So all right.
This one in my room. You need it? I didn't, yeah.
So let me really quickly, I'm gonna, apologize to everybody. I didn't realize that I needed to do this a little bit earlier and get it because I didn't realize it was this much work. But that's my own fault. I know better for next time. I'm gonna wait a little bit because I can kind of sort of monitor it from my phone and kind of sort of see how many people are viewing or who's viewing what. So I'm gonna wait just a second. Let me see.
I'm not doing this with you.
Okay. So really quickly, everybody, I just want to say, first of all, like I was saying, I apologize, but we got it situated now. So I want to say, kind of sort of what the intent was, like I said, with what I was doing. was just to have a real life conversation about some things that are really prevalent in our age group, in our generation, and some of which are, and some of which um, are uh, sex, dating, and and marriage. So, okay. So we do want to, go ahead and get underway really quickly. I'm gonna really just kind of sort of be winging it here just a little bit, but I want to ask if Matt, if you will, just open us up with a brief moment of prayer while we get ready to discuss some of these things from a real life.
As we bow, God, thank you for this time, this opportunity for us to come together and share our thoughts, ideas. Thank you for the facilitator that's coming together. Bless him, his church, and their people. Bless everybody on this call. May you be abundant and alive in us. Blessings flow. Amen.
Amen.
I like that little tagline at the end, blessings flow. Like
Blessings flow.
that's definitely going to be a thing
Let
after a while. It won't be long. It's going to be a thing.
all seasons, blessings flow, and our good and bad blessings flow.
It's going to be.
Can't do nothing about it. Blessings.
It's
Mark
definitely
and Matt, y'all not gonna let us see y'all? It's easy to have a conversation with everyone present.
Oh my.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
So yeah. So here it is, guys. Everybody's not here, but it still looks like we got 6 people. I mean, no, it's only 5 of us, right? Where's Mark? It's 6 of us. All right. So it was supposed to be kind of sort of balanced out. So unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But real quick, if everybody would just kind of sort of let the people know who you are. And I don't know how y'all screen look, but right now I see Antonio at the top, and then underneath him I got Jasmine. Next to her I got Martinique. Below that I got Matt, and I'm just going to presume that on the next, if I slide over, I'll have Mark. So that Richard Carter, that's just kind of sort of me and me kind of sort of gauging where I am. So y'all don't have to pay that no attention. I haven't really figured this Zoom thing all the way out just yet because my church still does driving and service, and I never switched over to the Zoom platform. So just bear with me for a moment while I work through this stuff. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. Quick icebreaker, let everybody know who you are and kind of sort of where you stand in ministry, where you're located, and then we'll get into this thing.
Name is Antonio Carter. I am associate minister at the Wesley Chapel AME Zion Church in Greenville, Kentucky, and also serve as the executive assistant to the presiding elder for the Western Kentucky District.
Hey y'all, my name is Jasmine M.D. Jones, and I am a member at a lot of places, but AME by denominational affiliation, and yeah, that's that.
Hello, my name is Martinique Mix. I'm a member of the AME Church, and yes, I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Who's next? Okay, I am Matthew C. Wright. I hail from Birmingham, Alabama, because we just had a conversation about from Maryland. I now live in Alabama, and I'm a licentiate in the AME Church, and yeah.
Excuse me. My name is Mark Brooks. I am a member of the St. Paul AME Church in Smithfield, where I serve under the leadership of the Reverend Brian Keith Blackwell. I am also a licentiate in the 9th Episcopal District of the AME Church.
So real quick, everybody, I mean, y'all already know who I am. My name is Micah Carter. I'm blessed to serve as the pastor of the Mays Chapel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in the city of Sipsey, Alabama. And so we're going to get underway here. Just before we got on, for real, me and Matt were sharing, you know, some ideas and some thoughts and conversing just a little bit about a couple of different things. And honestly, I do want to say that this conversation won't be very it won't be very formal. It's just going to be a freelance type style conversation. We haven't prepared any answers. We haven't prepared any questions. It's just really just friends getting on, conversing one with another about the topics that you see pictured here: marriage, dating, and sex. It's just a conversation about those three topics, because really, in a general sense, you know, these are some things that don't come up that does not come up in a church setting. And so we want to just, you know, take advantage of this opportunity. We're not going to be here on long. I know a lot of time has been wasted while we've just been working out the kinks. So if you'll just give us about 30 minutes or give me about 30 minutes and we'll be out of your hair. So real quick, Matt, if you don't mind striking up where we kind of sort of left off from the beginning, so we can just kind of sort of take the conversation there. I talked to Jasmine earlier. She got some stuff that, you know, that she kind of sort of want to get out of her mind too. So we're going to talk about a little bit about women in ministry and women who are in ministry and their dating life and so on and so forth. So we do want to talk about that and touch bases on that too. But Matt, if you will kick us off and kind of sort of get us going.
I was making a statement about how in the conversation, as we examine different things, we tend to generalize experiences as well as make assumptions about what people learned or thought about, or, you know, picked up or put back, or how we're doing things now, even how we're doing things now, and how that relates to moving forward. If we're not presenting the conversation, if we're not starting the conversation, asking questions, making approaches or anything that are in no way like generalizing to the thought that everyone has had the same experience. I think we just, you know, as leaders, as all those things that we are, that bring us to these spaces where we are challenged to answer these questions. We should approach them knowing that everybody has had a different experience. So our answers should be very, if not experiential to ourselves, but something we know, as well as something we could back up. You know, you would never tell somebody, oh, you know, like look at Color Purple type situation, oh, beat her. You know, you'd never advise that. You'd never, you know, do something like that. But you know, just how you approach stuff, like, oh, well, dude, this is what you do because that's what people do, or you should just do this. You look well, you look good, you all, you know, this and no. Well, what y'all need to do is y'all need to get beyond the prayer closet, and y'all need to go talk to a counselor. Y'all might need to stop, you know, putting all your time or your work into or putting your energy into these things, trying to distract yourself from it and really approach it. These are the things that you're doing wrong. These are the things you're doing right. These are the things that, you know, are your good points, but these are your bad points. Somebody mentioned before the call, there's a lot, that was you, Micah, like there's a lot of conversation leading up to, or people getting into entanglements of all sorts, whether they lead to marriage or dating or all that. You know, there's not a lot to follow after. It's kind of like, you know, afterwards, oh, well, that's their business. So, yeah, approaching these conversations, and when we do so, try not to generalize. Somebody could pick up, I mean, what are you all's thoughts on?
Yeah. So I agree with you, Matt, right? Like our experiences are not monolithic. And I think that it's important, and something that we probably left out of introductions is, right, like, are you married? Are you divorced, right? Where are you in this conversation, right? Like, what is your starting off point? Where's your foundation? So for me, I'm single, been single for a minute, right? And so my experiences and my thoughts around things like marriage and dating change based on where I am in that season.
So kind of sort of one of the things that that came up is you know, how we generalize what we believe as Christians, how we generalize what we believe in our faith. So really quickly, if I could just ask, like I said, this is very, you know, just conversational. If I can ask somebody want to kind of sort of kick us off with kind of sort of what you were taught growing up about dating, about sex, about marriage, so we can kind of sort of roll from there. Just let us know, you know, kind of sort of what were you taught growing up, and we'll kick it off from there.
Well, I did comment on that in the that is what kicked some of the stuff. Okay, so my lessons were very straightforward, in you know, the best ways. It wasn't, oh well, this is this is that, but as situations arose, they brought about questions. Many of them I could answer because I guess I had examples. I had great examples. I had bad examples. I had, you know, mediocre examples. I had, you know, super examples of different types of marriages, different types of bonds, love, breakups, divorce, children, raising the children, bearing, you know, parents together, bearing loved ones together, you know, seeing how support happens when people get sick, when people are well, when people are breaking the law, when people are not breaking the law. Like, I've had all types of examples around me, but at home I had a solid example of, and I call them the standard. Like, they're my example of what it is, and everybody has their example. Everybody's household, you know, is different. Everybody grew up different, but I had a solid example of what I was supposed to do. I guess the sequence of doing it, you know, you get into that, like, what's that? Just, you get met, you go to school, you meet this person, you all get married, and you have kids, and you build this life together, and you grow old together, and you know, have grandkids, and like all these, this is the pattern, you know? So when I looked at the Cosby Show, when I looked at like the Parenthood, when I looked at all these different shows, you know, I saw my parents. I saw my family. I saw that, you know, so this became what it did. And those others that were around me, because, you know, those are one of the benefits that we can talk about, you know, being in the church. We're talking about the church right now. Where we're in a generation that has never had this great of a lens to look at ourselves and examine like what's going on. And we've had a lot of examples that just say, you know, I don't want that. I don't want that. I do want that. That looks cool. Let me try that out. Nah, not so much. You know, that no other real generation has had like we do. So that affects a lot of things. That trips up our original beliefs and all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's what I was brought up with. Was I had a lot of examples around me from being in church, but I had a great example at home to compare a lot of that to. And
So,
yeah.
so for me, I don't really remember having the conversation with my parents about sex. Not to say that they did not. I don't remember ever really having that conversation with them. So for me, my teaching about sex came from the church. It came from my bishop. I remember at annual conference. I've been going to annual conference since I was 4 or 5 years old. And on Saturday of our annual conference, it's Christian Education Day. And so that's our day. And I remember our bishop would always take time, and his wife would take time just to talk to us about different things. And one of the things that stick out to me most from the late Bishop Richard Keith Thompson, he gave us his definition of sex. And his definition of sex was an experience between two married people. And so my teachings growing up of sex always came from the church. It came from the Christian education meetings where we were taught you should wait till marriage. You shouldn't have sex until you're married. You shouldn't have sex until you're married. It's wrong to have sex before marriage. And so that's how I was brought up. Did I always listen? Of course not. Like most of us, we don't. But that's what I was taught. And so now, as an adult, I have a teenage daughter. I teach her don't have sex to marriage, but I think we also need to now, because we understand and we know that they're not going to always listen, they're not going to always wait. We have to kind of, I think, shift our gears, shift our message to, yes, the Bible says you should wait, or you should wait to that right person, but we need to teach education as far as, if you're going to do this, how are you going to do it? And so I think we need to kind of shift our message and not just teach abstinence, but teach protection as well.
I think that, so for me growing up, I was raised by a single mama. And both my parents have degrees in biology. Shout out to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. But for me, like, I started having conversations about my body in the bathtub at 3 years old, right? Like, properly naming things. And then sometimes my mama had this shirt that she would wear that had the birth cycle, right? So it was very educational for me my entire life. And then when my mama shifted into ministry, while abstinence and waiting until you're married was what was taught and what was supposed to be the standard, as time went on, she also catered conversations based off of my questions. And also, when the goal wasn't met, right, we had a real life conversation about what does this look like and how do we now regroup and what do we do from here, right? I think that for a lot of my friends who are also preachers and pastors' kids, when the goal wasn't met, it was too late, right? Their parents had the conversation once they were already 6 months pregnant. Like, at that point, it's too late, right? So for me, I'm thankful for the ability to have those conversations open and honest with my mama. And I feel like it made a world of difference in how I went about navigating the world.
So really quickly, Antonia, you brought up a quick point that Bishop Richard Keith Thompson, deceased, would explain to you that sex was when two married people come together. So let me just ask this question really quickly and just jump into it, because we all may differ in opinion, but what constitute religiously or biblically in the Bible or in our understanding of scripture, what constitutes marriage? Anybody who wants to kind of sort of address that one. What constitutes marriage? Not necessarily what societal norms are, not what legal norms are, but theologically or biblically from our own or from our biblical understanding, what constitutes marriage? Don't everybody answer at one time. Well, I'm sorry, Martinique. Go ahead.
That's fine. What I was gonna say is, for me, when I think about marriage in the biblical sense, I think about the fact that the Bible is contemporary to the time when you talk about relationships. And so how the relationships were perceived at the time are not the same as now. So, there's no real language that limits what marriage can be, because marriage is also the different, the constraints of marriage have changed through modern times. And so when we actually look at the Bible, we realize that how we perceive marriage and how they perceive marriage is not the same. So there's no real we can't always just equate the two things together. So I don't necessarily equate what marriage, how we think about it today, and the same as they thought about it in the Bible, for me as a lay person, because I didn't go to school.
I think,
that's what I think.
And the Bible really doesn't necessarily give us a definition of what constitutes marriage. It tells us that marriage is between a man and a woman, but if you think about it, the marriages in the Bible, Adam and Eve, Ruth and her husband, Joseph and Mary, you never really, with the exception of the wedding at Canaan, you never heard of weddings. They were married. Genesis 2 tells us, is it Genesis 1 or Genesis 2 tells us that God put Adam to sleep, took a rib out of him, created woman. He woke up and they were together. And so
now, Antonio, can I butt in right here for half a second?
Go ahead.
So you gave Adam a name, but you said God created woman. She had a name too. So is there a reason why Adam got a name, but you didn't name Eve? Because there's a lot of women in the Bible who aren't named. But for the ones that are, I think it's important that we use their names.
Put a name on it, Reverend. Put a name
but I
on
understand that, like Beyonce said, Adam woke up like that. He just woke up married. It was over. I get it. But I just wanted to question that. Like, is there a reason why she was woman and not Eve?
She got a name.
It's not.
Okay, I was just wondering, because sometimes we do things that are ingrained in our understanding and in our own theology and biases. And so I just take the time to call it out when I can, in love, of course, but to call it out where I can.
Let me just interject and say that is the proud 2020 graduate of the Kendler School of Theology at the Emory University there in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. You can't get that nowhere else. Hello, somebody.
And so,
but let me kind of sort of piggyback off of what you said. And Mark, I need you to come in in a little bit and teach us. But let me just say really quick, piggyback, Antonio. So the scripture does not necessarily prescribe or does not necessarily give us a set standard of what marriage is. Might I suggest to us that in some states, a marriage is not official until that marriage has been consummated. And once a marriage has been consummated, that you go through the ritual, you go through the process, and that marriage has been consummated, you can no longer get an annulment. You have to get a divorce because you are legally, officially, by all means, married. So is it safe to say that societal norms or legal norms have come to adapt that marriage is simply two persons coming together and having sex? Now, would somebody like to speak to that idea?
I'll say that's not the first time I've heard that. I don't know what to say about it, but it's not the first time I've heard that. It was a time or whatever, get the wisdom from the old man. And he said something about, so that's your wife or something? And I was like, nah. He was like, nah, that's your wife. I was like, what you mean? It's like, y'all. I was like, yeah. It's like, then that's your wife. It's like, cause the second you whatever, that became your wife. And I was like, okay, I'm going this good year, so like, that's not my first time hearing it. Somebody else has said it before, but yeah, like, so I'm curious, but I don't really know what to say.
Let me.
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, Jasmine.
I don't know. So that is my first time hearing that, actually.
Okay.
And I don't know that I expected to hear from somebody from the South for real, right? Like, I feel like geographically, conversations about marriage and what it looked like change, right? And the expectations thereof. And so that caught me off guard a little bit by a second or so. But I'm not considering anybody, my husband, that don't have paperwork.
Oh my.
I'm gonna need a whole license, certificate, depending on what state or commonwealth you live in. And I'm gonna need to have an insurance policy on him just in case, like. But I mean, if that's what we're doing these days, okay, that's different.
Let me also kind of sort of chime in there and say, I'd also add that in the state of Alabama, you no longer have to have a marriage license. In the state of Alabama, you now can literally go to the bank and get a sheet of paper notarized and file it with the court to say that we are married. There does not have to be a pastor. There does not have to be an officiant. There does not have to be a priest. There does not have to even be a witness. It's just two people saying, hey, we got married, going to the bank, getting it notarized, and then filing it with the probate court's office. So we to a certain extent,
don't come to Alabama. All right.
to a certain extent, the sacredness or the sanctity, or what we consider sacred and sanctified as Christians, has now been minimized to a notary at a bank. So let me just ask really quickly, or let me switch gears just a little bit, since we kind of sort of mingling.
Mark, you ain't got nothing to say? We can talk about three things. Nothing.
I'll chime in a second.
All right. Bless you.
I want to bring into this idea of marriage. What does it, not simply what constitutes or what does it mean to be married, but I see we do have some young ladies and some young men also on the call, and it got a little bit interesting when we were talking about giving Eve a name. So let's talk about, in marriage, domestic roles. Let's talk about, or what is perceived culturally to be domestic roles. Let us also discuss, and I got something that's going to be a little bit provocative, and I just want us to talk about it for just a moment. And it's going to come out of the Bible. So,
More provocative than what you just said?
More provocative than what I said, and it's going to be even more provocative simply because it's actually coming out of the Bible. So let's kind of sort of let's see wrapped around people's ideas. There's been a lot of conversation about who comes first in a man's life. There's been a lot of conversation revolved around whether men can make decisions. There's been a lot of conversation about who eats first, whether the children take priority over the spouse. There's been a lot of conversation about even this whole idea of submission. So let's delve really deep into this idea of marriage and gender roles and who should be doing what, if there is a should be doing what. And so anybody that want to talk about that, and we'll take it from there.
Now, so here's the interesting part about that. This whole conversation about who comes first, the wife or the mom or whatever the case may be. When you look at the Bible, and I believe it's 2 Corinthians, I believe it is, it talks about where it talks about marriage, and it talks about the husband and the wife coming to be one. You always hear about the husband leaving his mother and his father and clinging to his wife. But you never hear about the wife leaving and clinging to her husband. So it kind of makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. And it makes you start to think, because the Bible doesn't even really address it. It addresses the husband, but not the wife.
It makes you wonder what?
It makes you wonder about the whole when we have this argument, who comes first? You know, the parent or the spouse. I believe that, you know, I'm of the belief that the spouse comes first. Because I believe in Ephesians where it talks about is when it gives you the order, it gives you the God, the husband, the wife, the children, and then your family comes after that. But I believe the spouses should come first. The husband should come first to the wife should come first to the husband, because when it's all said and done, once you stand at the altar, or as Micah said, you go to the notary at the bank, that's the person that's responsible for you, and that you're responsible for them. Your mother, your father, you know, and when you stand before the preacher, they say, who gives this woman to be married to this man? And the father, the mother, or mostly the father say, I do. He's giving you away to, he's giving the woman, the wife away to her new husband. And so now it's your responsibility. So now you are the person that's responsible for each other. And it's not the parents' responsibility anymore. So that's why I believe that it should be your spouse and then the children and your parents.
Yeah, so I mean, ingrained in the marriage ceremony and the ritual, as well as the historical context, the woman is property. So in the Bible, it's the man because he's the leader, right? Like, and so contextually now, where we are in the world, where there are more and more women who are becoming the breadwinners of their families, right? We've got to look and interrogate that a little bit differently based on what's happening, right? So for me, I like to tell people, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. And so I'm from the best of both worlds. The North don't want to claim us. The South don't want to claim us. We just squeezed in the middle out here, right? And so I feel that way about a lot of things, right? Yes, I want to have a wedding ceremony, right? But I also want this to be an authentic and true partnership, right? Will I allow my husband to lead? Absolutely. However, what I'm not going to do is sit here silent. And so I feel like there's a negotiation and a navigation that needs to take place when we look at these texts critically to really see what is the fundamental truth. Then the other thing is, when we examine the Bible in general, it's based on a historical context that has come and gone several times, and yet it hasn't been changed. Also, it has been redacted based on who was publishing at the time. And so the King James Version, not only the language and the patriarchal parallels, but also what is important to King James is not important in 2020. So, I mean, there's a whole way in which you got to vibe with this and look at it from a space of being educated, learned, and woke, right? Like, those are the buzzwords right now, being educated, learned, and woke. So you got to look at it through different lenses and different perspectives based on where you are in that spectrum of belief. But that's just my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Martinique.
Okay, I would definitely piggyback off what Jasmine said, because even looking in the Bible, if you look at the Old Testament versus the New Testament, the idea of sex and relationships greatly changed based on before Christ and after, and then people not understanding. In the Old Testament, there were a different level of understanding. So they how they viewed it was a little bit more open compared to the New Testament. It's a little bit different. But definitely when you talk about submission, as Jasmine said, it's not that, you know, I wouldn't submit to my husband or wouldn't be a partner, but it's really about whether or not he is capable of leading. Because if he's a weak man, then there's no need for me to submit, because he doesn't have it to even lead. So I think a lot of times when men say women don't want to submit, they're not taking into account that they're weak, they're too weak to lead, you know. And when a man is weak, he will do anything to stay in control. And so we have to look at whether or not men are strong enough to lead. And then if you are, then yes, women do want to submit, especially Black women, because Black women have been trained for forever how to be a wife, how to be a girlfriend, how to be a mate. But it comes into the thing where now in, you know, 2020, we have to start training men, Black men, how to be a partner to Black women. Because not only do you have to be woke, you have to be their friend, you have to be all these different things, but you have to, you know, give them the knowledge. So you can't train them and then expect them to also be that person. And so my whole thing is, at this point, you know, I joke on Facebook, I could really go for a Stedman type relationship, like an Oprah term relationship, where it might not be marriage, but there might be an understanding of that I'm with this person. We have a deep relationship, we have a connection, and marriage is not necessarily the next step, but it's just there. You know, we're just together. So I think that when we talk about relationships, we talk about roles and everything, we have to find what works for us. Because I mean, really, you know, I thought I was gonna be married, but like, I'm so glad I'm not, because I the age that I was gonna be married, it wouldn't have worked, right? But I'm on this journey, and like right now, it's a totally better place for me to be possibly thinking about a relationship. So that's my 2 cents.
Let me interject here and say, I believe that men tend to want to stop at the part that says, wives, submit to your husbands. That's it. We tend to want to take that soundbite and make it work for whatever it is. Like, she's supposed to be a dummy that just follows along and gets strung along. However, the reality of it is the latter part of that sentence is just as important as the preface of that sentence that says, as your husband submits to God. The reality of it is, and Martinique, you brought this up, you said a weak man. And the reality of it is God has, in my understanding, God has predestined or ordained for the man to lead his family. And that is just, in my understanding, or biblically, I believe that it is the man's responsibility to be a leader. It is not his wife's responsibility to just be led in any which direction. And when she chooses not to follow quote unquote bad leadership, the patriarchal construct would say that she's even wrong for not following bad leadership, because it doesn't say follow your husband, whether it's good leadership or bad leadership. It just says, so the patriarchal construct will say that, whereas practically women in our society are not going along with bad leadership. That's the first thing that I want to say. The other thing that I do want to say is we have to address the fact that societal norms have changed, and we are no longer dealing, in a lot of cases, no longer dealing with the structure that was from our parent and grandparents' day and age. A structure of women who were uneducated, who did not have a job, who depended and needed a man to ensure that everything was taken care of, no matter what that man was doing, whether he was a Rolling Stone or whatever the case may be, whatever he had going on, she had to stay because that was her connection to survival. Now these women, like someone, I think it was either Jasmine or Martinique mentioned, are now in a lot of cases breadwinners. And And the reality of it is they don't have to put up with that stuff anymore. So I think that the church also has to come to a mediation and say that we recognize that men should be leaders. We recognize that women should be submitting to good leadership, but we also recognize that there is a disconnect, and sometimes we haven't taught our men how to lead. We have not taught our men how to follow or how to discern via God or via the Holy Spirit. And so because that becomes an issue with men, and that how we misinterpret the text, we allow our natural, our God-given, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of sort of rambling a little bit, but I did want to say about how one of the things that they teach us in course of study, one of the things that they teach us is you do not have to walk in the room and say, I'm Reverend so-and-so or I'm Pastor so-and-so. Simply because you walk in the room, people will recognize who you are. This is the honest to God truth. I was out earlier running some errands with my girlfriend and earlier today, and one of the things, we passed by this older Black lady, and she was just being cordial and making conversation. And she said something to me. She said, why y'all walking across that street or something like that? And then she said, you got that big old pistol on your hip. And then she said, let me ask you a question. She said, are you a preacher? I said, yes, ma'am, I am. She said, are you really? I said, yes, ma'am. She looked at my girlfriend, asked my girlfriend and said, is he lying to me or is he really a preacher? She said, no, he really is. And what's so crazy is I've never met this lady a day before in my life, but she was able to see something about me that said preacher, pastor, whatever the case may be. So it's the same thing. When you are a leader, when you are a man, when you are truly the head of your household, you don't have to say, this is my house, I pay all the bills here, this I run. You don't have to do that, because how you lead truly shows who and what you are, and that God is doing something on the inside of you to make you a God-fearing leader in the true head of the household. You don't have to throw around waiting for people to know who you are. I wanted to say that I'm allowing somebody else to come in and make some statements.
Matt unmuted, so go ahead, Matt. But I just want to
say,
talk about
okay,
double standard.
it got good to him. I just want to say it got good to him. He started going on a little bit, and I just wanted to say something about that. But yeah, go ahead. So, it's interesting, and Matt and I have had this conversation. I hate you. So Matt and I have had this conversation, right, about the double standard in ministry and dating, right? So Micah, you're able to openly say, my girlfriend, and nobody gonna care. If I ever claim somebody,
oh my,
without a ring, maybe two, depending on the district, right? It would be like heresy, and it would be like a call, like Jasmine done dated too many people. Like, what?
Now,
so it's interesting that you can just go and be out there in the world living your life.
And to that, what I shared was that I shared before, like it's like what did I say? A guy can bring 3 girls
in 5
years to a church, and they'd be like, oh, he's just figuring things out, But a woman can bring 2 guys in 8 years, and it's, well, what's up with her? Like, what's going on? That's the second one, y'all know,
right?
The last time, and da. So that's what I shared with that. But that's a major.
But I'll say,
but
from my perspective, I haven't really seen that. From what I've seen, it's the opposite. Where
you live?
I've seen the opposite, where a single female pastor does better than a single male pastor.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay,
but that's because of the patriarchy.
Yeah, that's a
That's
different.
because of the patriarchy.
Now-
That's because you expect for a woman to do the work, whether she's married or not. And then when or if she becomes married, now you like, well, can you ask your husband if you can? No. It's all a different mentality, bro.
But also it's because women in the church think if the pastor is single, they can maybe be with him. That's their husband. They don't think about that for the women. So that's another side. But I do want to say, lay women have the same issue. I know we forget about that, but I'm a lay woman. I have the same issue. So just add that lay to it.
Let me interject really quickly. I'm not saying that there is that it's an equal playing field, but I do want to say that oftentimes, if a young man goes to a church and he's not married and does not have children, a lot of times they'll suspect that he's gay or that it's something wrong with him as well. I'm not saying that is equal, but let me just hear me out.
We have to answer. We have to go down that rabbit hole of why that be a thing. Like you said, because you said, oh, he might be gay. Like yeah, you know, whoa, don't want that. You know, so it's like you gotta touch on that. That's changed too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
changed. So you know, he might, and how you do that both ways. You know, like, hey, he's not, and he's just not dating somebody, and he might be gay.
Let me say this really quickly. We got a question from one of our viewers, McKillies Morrison, and his question was, and I'm just going to safely say that it is to the ladies, because it says, so do you really want to submit, or do you want to be equal? Modern women don't like to relinquish their control. Anybody want to speak to that?
So for me, it's not a matter of control. I've said this previously, and I'm sure it's recorded somewhere on the social medias, that I will willingly submit, but I need to know where we're going and how we're going to get there. Right? Earlier I said I want a true partnership. Listen, if you want to make a left-hand turn, go on and make a left. But I need to know that this left-hand turn is going to get us back on this straight way to where we said we were going. And that's just me personally. I can only speak for me.
Well,
okay.
For me,
you did
for
say
me,
where we going, but
right.
You know, but that's, I mean,
okay. For
so
me,
doesn't that come into the? I'm sorry, because that was the submission and the we thing, like you know, bridging that gap. Because
okay, well, for me, I would say that I want to be in line. I want to align with someone. I want someone who can. I do want to submit, and I do want partnership. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think that we don't have to have either or. I think that when you find someone who can understand you. I'm sorry, my dog is barking right now. But someone who can understand you, and like you said, like Jasmine said, who can communicate, who can create a true sense of where I know where you're going. I trust you. I can submit to you. I can be with you. I can align with you. But oh my God, I don't know why he's barking. But I'm gonna stop because
we can't hear him. Go on.
We can't hear.
Okay, because I can hear him. But I think that when you're with a strong person that can handle your personality and can handle you as a woman, I think you're open to being submissive. But when you're with someone who makes you feel like you can't be yourself or you can't trust them, then you're not going to be like that. And so I think it's important for women to know themselves and to know what they're actually looking for in a partner. And to know that, you don't really like when someone talks to you like that. So I think those are things that are important.
And I think that what's important that Martinique said that needs to be highlighted is that we can have both. It's not an either or situation. And I feel like in religion, a lot of times we see things as either or, and they're not mutually exclusive. Like,
Okay.
I can have both. I don't have to choose potatoes or grits. I can have both of them. Like, and put cheese all over all of it, right? Like, I can have both. It is possible. But you gotta find somebody you align with. But that's it. Go on, Michael.
Let me shift gears to what will be undoubtedly provocative subject in and of itself. And it comes from the book of Titus, the 2nd chapter and the 5th verse. Come on, Doc, you already there. Titus chapter 2. And I want to take this by gender, and since the scripture has it aligned this way, we'll go with the women first. And Titus, the Titus chapter 2, it says, older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips, nor enslaved to much wine, teaching what is good, so that they may encourage the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be sensible, pure, and workers at home, kind, being subject to their own husbands, so that the word of God will not be dishonored. Let's talk about this text. Come on, somebody give me some input, because I mentioned gender specific roles a little bit earlier, so we talking laundry, washing dishes, and ironing, and grass cutting, and tree pruning, and all of those different things. And let's look at this text, and it says to us what women should be doing, or in this perspective, a woman's role or whatever. And so let me hear from this panel about how this text makes you feel when you hear it, what you think, and how to possibly explicate what's going on in the text.
It's my support as to why I want to be a stay-at-home mama. I'm good with it. Yes, she will. Listen, she will love her husband and her children and make a home for them. No worries. None.
Okay.
Right? But I also acknowledge that I went to an all-women's college, a predominantly white one, where that was kind of ingrained and taught, right? So I'm a little conservative on that side. Not gonna lie about it. But I also understand that in 2020, the realities of a Black woman being a homemaker are slim to none. So,
Anybody else want to?
So what I will say is, okay, so my father passed away when I was like 10. Okay, so for more than half my life, my mom has been a single parent. So I've seen her do, a lot of the things that happen. And so my upbringing, I saw my dad, so I understand, marriage and that kind of thing. So when he was alive, they had different things that they would do, but it was never gender specific. Like there was never where sometimes he would stay at home and my mom would work, and sometimes she would be with us and he would work. And even my mom telling me about my grandparents, that, my grandmother for one time, she was the breadwinner, and, majority breadwinner when he was, in ministry, but I don't believe that there has to be the same roles for every relationship. I think for me, I like to sometimes fix things up around the house because I'm used to it, because that's what I had to do. Like if there's something that needed to be fixed, there wasn't necessarily a man right there. So I would just, get in where I fit in. I would just learn how to fix something. And so I don't necessarily think that you have to do what society says, but I think in that, looking at that text, I think it's one of those times where we take text and we try to make it fit a lot of spectrums, a broad spectrum. That text really doesn't talk about that she necessarily just has to be in the household, but it talks about giving fundamental morals and history to the women that are coming up. So I think if we look at it and that part, like, yes, women should have an understanding of certain things, but that doesn't mean that they have to be limited to in the household. I think we don't have to just think about it as one aspect. I think when you're training young women, you should train them to know themselves. You should train them to understand who they are in society. You should give them knowledge and history. You should give them your history. I think that's what works, that's what I get from that text. I don't necessarily get that, you have to train them to stay at home or be in the home. Because like Jasmine said, like for Black women, that's not really an option. And it's not because Black men can't support us, but it's because in society, Black people have to have, if they're able to have two incomes in the house, that's what really works best. Like Jasmine, what I'm saying, if you trying to put me as a homemaker, I can work online from the house. Well, however, I'm open to whatever works best for our relationship and works best for our kids, because at the end of the day, I want to be an example to the children that, whatever you're doing, you can do whatever you want to. So yeah, I think you just have to find what works for your partner and you.
Yeah.
Antonio, go ahead and make your comment. Jasmine, follow up behind him, and then I want to kind of sort of go to a comment that was said on the YouTube live. So Antonio, if you will, kind of sort of make it quick, 120 characters. And
put it at least if you 140.
That's a Thanksgiving joke in our family. I hear y'all saying that it's difficult for Black women to be a stay-at-home mom or to not work or whatever the case may be. But I'm reminded of an episode of Good Times. I watch Good Times every night, and I remember an episode where Frank proposed to Walona. And after he proposed to Walona, he wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home wife. And she just about lost her mind. And it wasn't that she needed to work with being married to him, because he made good money to be able to support her and Penny. And so how much of it is that you can't and you don't want to?
Go ahead, Jasmine.
If my husband can support my standard of living, because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Living
within your means.
I live within my means.
I'm not saying that you don't. I'm just saying.
But I'm not going to take a step back either here.
Hello, somebody. Come on, talk to us.
I'm not buying store brand ketchup and mustard. Not going to happen. It's not, right?
Ketchup is not ketchup, just like hot dogs is not hot dogs.
You see?
It's all made in the same factory.
Run that back one time, Mark. What?
It's all made in the same factory, just slap a different stick on it.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
So
they don't taste the same. But the point is, if my standard of living doesn't have to adjust, I'm good with it. Right? Like, I've been unemployed for 4 years while I was in grad school, because I needed to be. So I've gotten comfortable being unemployed. I don't have to go back to work. I mean, for me, and I think I've had this conversation with Micah and Mark, until January, I'm gonna be a stay-at-home mama and wife with no husband and kids, right? Like, right. I'm literally going to be home, making whatever I need to, brushing up my skills, because I need this time. But I also acknowledge that when I get married, if I need to go into the workforce, I am equipped to do that as well.
I love that. I think that there's a place. Let me moment of transparency. At least 3 of the people that are on this call, aside from me, know at one point in time I was engaged. And one of the things that me and my ex used to discuss was that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but she also wanted her own money. And so even the one thing that she wanted was to possibly work part-time. And I always expressed to her, as a family person, I don't mind a stay-at-home wife. I wouldn't mind a stay-at-home mom. And so, and this whole idea of having her own money was because she doesn't want anybody to control that her financial situation. She doesn't want one person to be able to determine yes or no to anything that she wants to do. Now, with that being said, I want to switch gears, come to this comment. I really got two on here that I want to get to, but because I said that, I want to, McKillies Morrison again commented and said, but as a society, why do we equate breadwinning to leading? And why do we perceive making a home for them as doing chores? Let's kind of sort of address that topic if we possibly can. Mark, if you don't mind, could you chime in on that one for us?
Okay, I got you. So that's the good question. Just because you're making the most money, you're the breadwinner, doesn't mean you have the skills necessary to lead the home. What are the steps you're taking for proper leadership? And also the homemaking aspect. Yeah, that's definitely not chores at all. I don't know who told them that equates to chores. Homemaking is literally making it home. Is it comfortable to live in? Is it a comfortable living situation? Can you come home and have peace?
You know, you got to set the vibe, get the essential oils in the diffuser going. You got to be ready for this stuff. I'm brushing up on my skills in January. I'm ready.
So with that, I want to go and go to one of the comments that are okay. Here it is from CJ Chickpea. That and that person commented saying, that's assuming that the father is in the home. What do you say to the child that has no father, to the woman that has no husband? If I could slide in here a little bit, my parents divorced when I was 12 years old, and I always had a relationship with my father, but I lived with my mom. And with that being the case, let me say a lot of things that I learned. I learned throughout my life from mentors, and some I did learn from my dad. One thing that stuck with me, when I was in the 10th grade at Carver High School here in Birmingham, I was in the choir for 4 years. All 4 years of high school, I was in the choir. We had a concert at Olivet Monumental Baptist Church, and I showed up, and I did not. All my gig line was all messed up. How older men teach younger men to line their belt with their pants, with their shirt, was all messed up. And the choir director at that time, he was joking, but he looked at me and he said, ain't nobody ever taught you how to do that, and blah, blah, blah. And and that stuck with me, that sometimes our young men don't have the right example. But I started latching on to male mentors to teach me how to do things and show me how to, I mean, not that my dad didn't teach me this stuff, because my dad taught it to me too. But I say all that to say that a lot of young men need positive role models and mentors in their lives to teach them the truth of what it means to be men, even at a young age. And so it does not matter. We lost somebody. It does not matter whether or not your mom has a husband or whether you don't have a dad and you're a young man, you got mentors, you have a pastor, you have male teachers, you have some people around you who are being men, coaches, athletics, somebody that you can latch on to. And so that's what I would say to that question that was asked. Go ahead, Antonio.
Let me interject something to that, because here's on the flip side. Unfortunately, you do have some cases where they may have two situations. They may have men, but it's not a positive male influence. It's the drug dealer down on the corner, or or the game banger that he ain't trying to do nothing. So do we want them following that? But the other side of that is, unfortunately, and this is a conversation that Dad and I have a lot, and it may strike up some conflict, but oh well. That's where it goes back to a lot of the positions that we see in the schools. They don't have males. I was talking to my mother a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling her, I remember in elementary school from K through 6, there was only one male teacher the whole time. Then I remember as an adult working at a school, and there were no males. And so and unfortunately, a lot of our young people now don't go to church. So they don't go to church, or they do go to church. As somebody said, I think it was Mark said earlier, the women are kind of taking over the church. And so you have a lot of female pastors now. And so they don't have a male pastor. And so in some cases, they don't have any males. And so that's why I think we need to where these programs, and I think we need to do a better job with our community service as the church to reach out to not just our members, but to the community.
Now, we can agree on that, Antonio. We do need to do a better job at going into the community, right? And being a present light and help. However, you made this statement that women are taking over. And I find that problematic. The reality is that women have always run the church. We just haven't been the face of the church. The reality is that we still aren't the face of the church. Now, there are more women who are serving in senior pastor positions, absolutely. And I'm thankful to see it, right? However, it is still a very male-dominated situation.
I may agree with you on that. I'll just give you an example of my district. When I first
And what denomination are you again?
AME Zion.
Okay, bless you. All right.
When I first got to my district, it's a small district. We only have 6 churches on the district. But when I got to the district, there were one male pastor, and that was the presiding elder. Out of the 6 churches, 5 of them were females. Then I got to the district, it was 2. Now there's 3. It's kind of split half and half now. I can't speak for the AME church. I can't necessarily speak for the CME church, but I can speak for us. Mm-hmm. When I look at my home conference where I was born, grew up, got my training, you have more females coming up now into the ministry than you have males. We went probably 7 or 8, maybe 10 years of nothing but females receiving their call to preach and not having any males. So I can only speak for my church.
But have you considered that women have been silenced for so long that now they're actually speaking up and letting their voices echo instead of allowing themselves to
be that silenced? Women want to get the education requirements to go through ministry? Or the fact that you're saying that there's more women in ministry, but when you look at the connectional level in the Episcopal seat in your church, how many women bishops are there? That's 1 and 2. But also, when we talk about women being in leadership and being supportive of Black men, okay, this is women who are pastors tend to support the young men in their churches far greater than they do the young women in their churches. Okay, so when you see young men that are actually doing stuff in their church because a woman pastor still wanted to look out for the young men. So we can't say because more women are in ministry or pastors that it affects what the leadership that or the maleship that the young men see, because that's not necessarily true.
And I agree with you too. I have a 15-year-old daughter. There are certain things that I can't discuss with her because I know absolutely nothing about. There are certain things that males go through that a mother cannot discuss or don't know anything about. They cannot teach their son. And so I think, yes, I was raised just like Micah. He was 12 when we have different mothers, same father, different mother. He was 12 when his parents divorced. I was 1 when my mom and dad divorced. And so I was raised by a single mother up until the age of 15 when my mother remarried. And so I was raised by a single woman. She did a good job. But at the same time, I say, like Micah, my father was in my life. I had a relationship with him, but I also had, like Micah said, or somebody else said, I also had those other influences at the church. My mother was in church. I was brought up in church. So I had my pastor who eventually became my father in the ministry. I had other men in the church that my mother would say, hey, I need you all to get a hold of him because that's what I needed. And so I agree with you, but there are certain things that we can't, I can't teach my daughter. And there are certain things that her mother can't teach her about what to, necessarily how a man should be. And so I think it needs to be a balance. I thought about this earlier, and this is my last thing, and I'll yield. I remember talking to a female some years ago, and she had a son, and she made this statement that my son doesn't need a father or something like that. She said, I can't remember. And I'm running this through my mind because anybody that knows me know I'm an old-fashioned soul. I'm young, but I'm old. And so I'm running this through my mind, and I'm like, and I'm telling her, we talking, and I'm like, that's not true, because there are certain things, yes, you could do a great job in raising him and he could become a productive citizen of society, but there are certain things that you cannot do. You need both parents. You need the male, you need the female. So I'm not saying that one is more important than the other. I don't get into the debate who's more important. Was it Adam or was it Eve? But I think you need both. And so, yes, the females do. My mother is a pastor, and she's at everything that her children do, male and female. So yes, they do. But they're sometimes, like the commenter said, they need that male influence, that positive male influence, because unfortunately they may have a male influence, but it's not the positive.
Well, I think our issue was when you said about the pastor part. Yes, we agree that young males should have, relationships and should have someone who can give them tools and information necessary. But when you said the part about them needing to have a male pastor to give them that, that's where we talked about, because if we look in the Black Methodist denomination, all of them, there is organizations that are about men working with other men. Okay, that's what we were talking about. So we kind of, because you kind of went from one thing to the other. We're talking about pastors and two parents and stuff. And you know what? Sometimes they're not going to have both parents, but I think it's important that Black men in society come together, and even if that child is not yours, come to a point where they're like, you know what? I want to be in another young man's life, giving him the tools necessary. Because all of my guy friends have mentees that they work with, regardless if that person's child or have any kind of familiar relationship to them. That's what we were talking about when you were talking about the pastor part. Of course, we agree with you. We definitely think that there are things that we can do, but it's also how you say it. Because if you're telling a single mom that, you know, she can't give the necessary tools to her son, it's sometimes just the way in which you say it. You know, you have to understand where she's coming from and then go through that way. I think sometimes we have a tendency not to listen to people and understand their perspective before we give them what we think and how we think the role should be.
Let me interject right there. I love this conversation. I do want to say two things really quickly. We are well over what we originally said. We never touched dating. So if we have to come back and do a volume 2, y'all just let me know. If y'all can hang on for a minute where we can address that topic for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops to try to, you know, get into it. Y'all just let me know how y'all feeling about that. But I do want to address, I want to say really quickly, CJ Chickpea commented and said, how long did it take for the church to ordain and acknowledge women in ministry? I cannot say for any of the other Methodist denominations, but the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, originally the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church, established in 1870, has always allowed women to be in ministry. Whether they were ordained or not was left, as it is today, is left entirely up to whoever is serving as the presiding prelate. So let me just say, there has never been anything in Christian Methodism, there's never been anything against women serving in ministry in any capacity. I also want to kind of sort of say to that, because you followed up by saying, yet it took ages before women were truly acknowledged in ministry. I have to seriously say that the church as a whole has not done a good job encouraging people to seek their true talents and gifts in ministry. Every man is not called to the pulpit, just like every woman is not called to the pulpit. Every man is not called to evangelism. And I believe we neglect the fact that Paul said there were some who were apostles, some pastors, some preachers, and so on and so forth. Whatever it all he says, it lists in there. We have to continue.
Don't forget, and he gave.
We have to continue to foster a serious or continue to bridge the gap and encourage people to discern where God is leading them, because some men who sit in the pulpit have no business being there, and so we darn sure cannot address women in ministry without addressing some of these men who have perverted the pulpit, who have used it to take an advantage of people, who have used it as a means to gain control over women and all these other good stuff. So, and who have perverted what God or the true ministry. So I do believe we have to address that. If we're going to address women in ministry, we have to deal with some of these issues with these no good men that are in ministry as well. Let me say this. I am not the one who calls. I am not the one who they have to answer to. But I do want to say, the Reverend Dr. Geraldine Adams Daniels is my pastor. And if anybody tries to question whether she is a leader, whether she is a preacher, whether she is a pastor, we're going to have a conversation about that, because I've seen how she has led God's people. And I'm not saying, I can't attest to whether she's been called or not, but what I can say is I know how she's impacted my life, my ministry. And I honestly believe that God has a place for everybody in the church, whether it's pulpit or whether it's pew, or whether it's missionary, evangelism, discipleship, whatever the case, there's place for everybody at the table. We don't have to get to fighting about who's supposed to be in the pulpit and who's not supposed to be in the pulpit. The Bible teaches us that at the last day that he'll come and separate the wheat from the chaff. And so if they weren't called and they said they weren't call and they've been operating in something that God didn't call them to do, then that's his responsibility to deal with them and not the church's responsibility. I can't address your sin. You can't address whether I'm called or not. And that's all that I have to say about that.
So that's that on that. Okay. Got it.
Now, let me just say really quickly, we got people still watching. Actually, views are kind of sort of growing a little bit. So that tells me a little bit that the viewers have not grown weary. Let me ask the panel, do you mind to continue for just another 20 minutes or so to discuss this topic of dating? If not, we can go
Keep
ahead
the
and
good times rolling.
You ain't said but 3 words.
That's one vote.
I heard Mark say keep the tide rolling.
That's one vote.
Matt, what you thinking? What you feeling, brother?
Does it take 20 minutes?
I mean, listen, this ought to be really quick. We heard a lot of folk put in plugs about their singleness, so we shouldn't be taking too long on this one.
We're here, Lord. We're on African time now. Let's let it go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me kind of sort of break the ice with the dating thing. Let me kind of sort of break the ice and say and ask Jasmine, I gotta put you on the spot. You were one of the persons who I heard say that you were big single or single, one of those two things that you said. Please explain to me why Jasmine MD Jones is single, first of all, and number two, what does the dating scene look like for you, being a woman who is well educated, who has a bachelor's as well as a master's of divinity in a field or in an area that is male predominant?
Okay, so I am single because I am, right? Timing, right? So I just finished my degree, and that was my focus. Like, dating wasn't my focus the last 4 years. And I was living in Atlanta, and so dating there is a little challenging. It's a little challenging. And so that's why I'm single. However, it's not for lack of people having interest. I mean, people slide in my DMs, people shoot their shots, and all of the other things that we say these days. But yeah, I mean, there are tons of barriers. And then when you throw in the fact that I just finished a master's degree, it makes it a little more challenging. I've tried the online dating thing. That was different. And so right now, I guess I'm working on a prayer and a referral system. So anybody out there, if you know somebody, just let your girl know. Or dudes out there, if you want to shoot your shot, like, there are a couple people on the court, but So yeah.
Keep playing.
And Tony, single male in a city such as Nashville, where there are a variety of cultures, a variety of women, a variety of ages. Tell us, man, what's it like dating? Being in ministry and dating, or dating period in this generation, what's it like?
You said Matt?
I said Antonio, but Matt, you
Matt, I'm sorry. No, he can take it.
Like, Matt, when you move, bro?
No, you got it, Matt.
You said when I move?
Because he definitely said in Nashville. Like, bro, when did you move?
I'm sorry. When he said Nat, I heard Matt. So I'm kind of like...
No, go ahead, Matt.
No, you got it. I'm not dating in Alabama and all that stuff. I'm not doing all that. It's been different. Things you got to think about, consider. A lot of moving parts. A lot of things happen.
So before you moved to Alabama, was it easier?
Nah, I'm a musician too, so it's
really y'all
listen. It's really much of the same, but like I don't know, the way you navigate is, like I said, for me, like it's the same. It's I got an example, and these are the things that you see, these things you like, these things you don't, and you use that to create a narrative, or you two to create your own idea. of what it is. And that's what's important is in ministry, like, no, I've had examples of what great partnership in ministry looks like, and what the strains are that play a role. So it's like, I'm always going in with the mindset of like, I don't want to control nothing. Be you, I'm gonna be me. But it also plays a role with like, these are the things you got to consider, because at the end of the day, I am in this position as I should for the person, right? So like we mentioned on the other side, it could be anything, like, okay, being fully supportive of each other and not just know that I'm a minister. No, what do you do? You know, like, you know, so it's both those things. Well, so yeah, you got it. I'm big on like not restricting anybody to an idea of what it means to be a preacher's whatever. I didn't like any of that. I don't like that stuff. Yeah.
Mark, can you take us home?
In what way? Finishing this conversation or in prayer?
Both and. Do both of them.
Yeah, Micah, in which way?
I want you to talk to us about how's dating in 2020 from the aspect of ministry, from however you want to approach it, man.
Dating as far as ministry wise. That is a tough one, especially here in Birmingham. People don't take you serious. No, listen, don't look like that. Not as far as ministry, but as far as wanting them. I've had about maybe 4 women tell me, what would you want with somebody like me?
That's it, Reverend.
I'm like, I'm a preacher. I'm not, just because I'm a preacher doesn't mean I don't need love and I don't want love or I don't want a relationship.
Talk to us,
or
Reverend.
that I'm not a normal person.
Teach us.
So I've had to break things down plenty of times to let people know that you have to separate ministry from a person. Just like Michael said earlier, you don't go around just saying, I'm Reverend so-and-so every time you enter a room. That's not who you are. That's your title. That's your calling. And yeah.
Let me
go ahead, Michael.
Okay. I want to say really quickly, we got a comment from Antonio James, and he said it's difficult dating being in ministry. I want to kind of sort of attach myself to that conversation and see if my fellow comrades, or even just being a layperson that is a believer or a Christian, Martinique, if you've had this, if any of you have had this issue where people automatically decide that they have to quote unquote tighten up around you or get themselves together when they sit in your presence or when they're around you, because they automatically assume you're preachers, so they can't smoke, they can't drink, they can't cuss or anything. And I'm not saying that those things may be acceptable, but I'm just curious to know kind of sort of your thoughts on the dating scene. On your thoughts on the dating scene. I do apologize. Let me digress for just a moment and send my sincerest apologies to Miss Mix. And I want to allow her to tell us what it's like being a layperson dating Madam International President. I do apologize. Please teach us and lead us in the direction in which we should go.
Well, because I'm not in the ministry that you guys are in, but I'm still in ministry.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have different challenges. I think one of the challenges is just being in the family business, coming from that side in the church, men perceive me differently. I want to say sometimes they feel intimidated. They're nervous or whatever. And so they don't see me necessarily, I would say, as an option. I'm like Jasmine, I'm single, but I'm okay with it. I'm at a point where I'm trying to figure out what type of relationship I actually want. I'm like trying to figure out what type of person I'm actually looking for, who is going to be my person. Is it going to be a marriage type situation or not? But I think just in dating, especially when you are a woman in leadership, there's a struggle because you have to be with a man who is, secure enough to know that he might not have the spotlight right then. Like I might go into a space and more people know me than him, but is he okay with that? Some men are not okay with that. Some men want to be, in the forefront, which is not to say that I don't know how to allow him to do so, but I also need someone who can, be with me in my spaces and take that on. Because one thing that I always get when I started to travel, people would always ask me, so you're not married at all? You don't have a relationship? You don't have a man? You don't have kids? You're just single by yourself? Like you're just by yourself? And that was so surprising to them that I could be at my age, be in leadership in the church and not be married or in any kind of relationship.
You're exactly right. So even as a layperson, you have some of the same issues, some of the same conflict that we have in this ministry of
The preaching
ministry.
Said that she's in ministry, it's just not ordained ministry.
Yes, ma'am. We do.
I just corrected him.
We want to acknowledge all forms.
Yes,
all forms of ministry. We don't want to leave anybody out. Lay ministry is very much so. Let me tell you something.
Without the lay, there is no us.
I was just about to say, before there was a clergy, there was a lay. And without the lay folk, the church will begin to fall apart. Let me just quickly say, the lay folk actually carry all the power in the church, especially in Methodism. So the lay folk actually can control some stuff. Let me say really quickly.
Our late bishop would say when he does protocol, established protocol, the late bishop, James McCoy would say, and to the marvelous lay people that pay all the bills.
So let me just say, let me just say really quickly, Antonio James brought out another point on the YouTube. He says, you get a representative versus the real person. Very few come authentic. Bring me the real you and allow me to decide. Don't date my title, date the human. Let me tell y'all something.
Facts, Antonio.
Mark and I have firsthand seen 2 or 3 different young ladies who were trying to attach themselves to preachers. And they don't realize that how much work it is to be or attach themselves to Christians, period. But I just want to say, you be have these people who want that power or they seek after that attention, and it's not always all this cracked up to be. So Antonio, we appreciate you for bringing out that fact that was said to us. Listen, guys, we don't have any more questions. Honestly, I've enjoyed everything that we've talked about. I enjoy listening to the different perspectives. Listen, we might have to do this again in a couple of weeks if this coronavirus thing persists. I want to say to each and every one of you, I'm grateful for everything that you brought to the table. I'm grateful for everybody who's had some form of input. let me just really say thank you to each and every last one of you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate the camaraderie that we've been able to share on different levels tonight. On different topics, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. We've all brought something to the table to share, and I'm grateful for your friendship. If we could just close out really quickly, Matt opened us up in prayer. I'm gonna close this out really quickly, and all of you will hear from me between sometime and tomorrow morning. They teach us all the time that, or they say all the time, we can't pay you what you're worth, but we can give you something. So all of
Close the
you will
prayer, nigga.
get some form of lunch on me. But anywho, let us close in prayer really quickly. Gracious God, we thank you for these dynamic leaders, lay and clergy alike, oh God. We ask that you would touch each of them, especially in their ministry. Lord, we ask that you would continue to give them fire, continue to unite them, and continue to grow them to you, oh Lord. We're grateful right now, Lord, and we thank you for this sacred space, this opportunity to discuss different topics, oh God, that are sacred or that are important to us. And so, Lord, as you continue to reveal yourself even in this time and continue to reveal yourself throughout our lives, God, we ask that we will be lights and that we will be an example of this walk, of this call, of this faith that we proclaim. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen, amen, amen. I thank all of you. Y'all have a good night. Anybody who has any follow-up or anything, hit us up. We appreciate you, and we'll see y'all next time.
Don't see me.